Tere, Privid, greetings from Tallinn, Estonia again. Got the Estonian and Ukrainian flags behind me. And in this video, I'm going to explain why I'm still positive about Ukraine's chances of emerging victorious and successful in the Russo-Ukrainian war, in spite of what has gone on in the last 24 hours or so with Donald Trump having a phone call with Vladimir Putin. And apparently, if you piece together all the comments made by Trump and his cabinet, that the plan that he's going to propose for peace in Ukraine, peace in our time, doesn't look very good for Ukraine's point of view, because it excludes Ukraine's membership of NATO. It excludes putting US troops on the ground to police a demilitarized zone between the two sides, and doesn't really provide much solace for Ukraine, with the exception of maybe the US is going to continue supplying Ukraine with weapons, and maybe they will, the current government will in some form stay on in power in Kiev. So, hello, my name is Connor Klein. If you're new to this channel, I'm an expert in international relations. I've been living in Ukraine for many years, speak Russian and Ukrainian. So I'm here to give you a more unique and insightful and thought-provoking take on the happenings in the Russo-Ukrainian war as we come to the end of the, well, it's hard to say if it's really the end of the third year of the war. The war started back in 2014 with Russia's invasion of Crimea and Donbass, and obviously extended in 2022 when they tried to seize Kiev and many more parts of the country. So yesterday, as I briefly outlined there, and actually I made a full video yesterday on potential peace plan, and I dubbed it a potential Munich 2.0. That is Munich from 1938, and Neville Chamberlain's infamous waving of the white paper, the white flag of surrender in effect, to Hitler's demands, and peace in our time, and all those shenanigans that went on. And actually tomorrow starts the Munich Security Conference in Germany. So slightly ironic that we have many of the US administration going to Munich and many world leaders at a time when history seems to be repeating itself in some ways. However, back last year, when the US aid package for Ukraine was held up in Congress and things were looking very bleak for Ukraine, I still posited that Ukraine would eventually emerge victorious, even if they had never received that aid, which eventually they seem to have received in large part, maybe not all of it yet, because ultimately Ukraine is fighting for its right to be an independent state of Russia and join the collective West. And Russia faces many problems. This was supposed to be a 3-day, 3-week, 3-month war at maximum for Russia. They would seize control of Ukraine, and here we are getting to the end of the third year since they launched their extended invasion on the 24th of February 2022. And they still only occupy 17% roughly of Ukrainian territory. That's including Crimea and the parts of Donbass that they control before the 2022 invasion. And going into this year proper, we're already into February, but I've been outlining for most of the last 6 months that this year Russia needs to resolve 3 looming crises. They are the fact that they will have a limited amount of volunteer soldiers, so men, a limited amount of military materiel, because they've been using those Soviet stockpiles and burning through them. And probably most importantly, their economy is facing real strain, and they are in danger of running out of money. Now, of course, Russia can find solutions to those problems. They're not particularly evident to me what they're all going to be. They can launch another mobilization, partial mobilization, like they did in the autumn of 2022 to try and solve the manpower crisis, but that will probably accelerate their economic malaise, because a lot of Russians left last time, a lot of productive Russians, and they could provoke that again, and they would take a lot more men out of the workforce and obviously earning money for the economy. So I'll go into that again in another video pretty soon. But basically Russia had, in my estimation, bet on Donald Trump winning the elections and him basically throwing Ukraine under the bus. And well, from yesterday's outlining by Donald Trump, he has partially indicated that he's going to do that. He still, it seems for now, intends to supply Ukraine with weapons. He's been rambling on about 500 billion in rare earth metals. I mean, not sure that those resources are exactly rare earth that Ukraine has, but there are a lot of resources there, and actually Russia currently occupies part of them in the Donbass and in Crimea. So there is some leverage for Zelensky to negotiate to get weapons from the US going forward. And according to the Ukrainian constitution, he is still the legitimate president of Ukraine, and all this talk about a new election, well, that wouldn't happen until martial law has been disbanded. And basically the strategy that I see Ukraine using for now is to play along with the negotiations and the talk about negotiations and bide for time that the Russian economy becomes weaker and weaker. Russia, as I've said many times, is facing huge problems. They have massive inflation at the moment, and they are in real trouble in terms of their economy because, well, war is expensive and the sanctions have been pushing up the cost of Russia doing business. Actually, here they turned off the connections to the Russian energy system over the weekend, which is, these countries used to buy energy from Russia, now they don't. So overall, Russia is going to face these huge problems. So unless Donald Trump says something really extreme, like he just cuts all military aid to Ukraine and lifts all the sanctions on Russia and starts doing huge business with Russia and basically helps Russia to win very directly in the war, and because it's very obvious, which I don't really see Donald Trump doing even now, even after all the talk of the last 6 months with the election campaign and what happened in the last, say, week or so. I just don't see that happening for now. So as long as Ukraine doesn't sign any sort of agreement and keeps fighting in the war, even if they slowly lose territory. And actually in the last week or two, we've seen Russia start to slow in terms of advances in Donbass and in Kursk, because Ukraine still occupies a part of Russia that they can use, obviously, as a negotiation chip in any sort of negotiations. And that is a huge problem for Vladimir Putin. He really needs to take back the occupied part, of course, before he gets into the negotiation. Otherwise, he's going to be under pressure to give back territory and move the lines back in order to liberate that Russian-controlled territory. Otherwise, Ukraine, I guess, would hold on to it and actually take a part of Russia, which would be rather strange for him to agree to do that. So even though a lot of people are very upset with Donald Trump, I'm not entirely surprised. I had given him the benefit of the doubt in the last few weeks. Let's see what he does. But he hasn't, it seems, with what he said yesterday, really done anything that is positive from Ukraine's point of view. However, he does have a tendency to flip-flop, and if Russia suddenly starts to look very weak, he may decide to back Ukraine in the future. So basically, we are in the situation that we expected to be in when he won the election back last November. So I'm going to leave you with that more positive, upbeat note compared to what you're probably going to see online from most people today. I'm not, unfortunately, that surprised, and Ukraine still has the opportunity to win in the long run. Countries that are fighting these long wars against a bigger aggressive state or an occupying state just have to look at the US and Vietnam, or say the Soviets in Afghanistan, or even the US in Afghanistan, if you want to put it in those terms, or the rebels in Syria, or the Taliban. Well, I just said that with the US in Afghanistan. Over the long term, they win if they are willing to hold on in spite of the huge cost to the society, if they are fighting for their liberty and to control their own country against an occupying foreign power, which Russia is. So those are my final thoughts on today, and tomorrow I'm going to get back into more content for you, and it is pretty chilly here in Tallinn, so I'm going to sign off. Do pobачення, do перемоги, and see you in tomorrow's video.